we hide behind a screen in a lot of different ways. And
Yes.
part of this journey for me was getting off social media for a whole year. Just deleted my accounts. I just
Wow.
wanted to look up. I wanted to be in touch with my neighbors and have real conversation. And I went back on social media with a completely different perspective, especially for women. We compare ourselves, we
Yes.
compare lifestyles, and every
Yes.
single post is a glimpse. It's a second, it's a millisecond. And so I have one agenda when I go on social media, and it's to help people grow. It's to coach and build that community. And then I'm very conscious about who I follow. So I encourage people to do that, as well as just think about, if you were talking to that person face to face, how would you be interacting with them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've lost the humanity of socializing with one another. And yeah, I'm 6'3" and a big boy. Not many people would say the things to me in my face like they do online. But
No, yeah.
come at me, bruh. But
Yeah.
no, there's a lot of hurt out there. And you mentioned earlier about trauma. Are you willing to share what you went through?
Sure. I mean, that's the beautiful part too, is that you get to share your story. I held it in for 25 years and,
Yeah.
well, I guess 20 years. But just sexual abuse, and I don't want to say religious trauma, because I even look back on that and there were such good people, right? We can look back
Well,
on our lives, even through the worst scenarios. I look at the leaders that were good, that had good intention.
Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just 1 singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere. Let's go get some wine.
it's kind of religious gaslighting. There's a lot of things about, and I don't want to diss on Christianity or other forms of religion, but they don't always serve us well with the messages. Oh, well, just give it to God and he'll cover it, and just let go. And, oh, that was in the past, Sarah, let go of that. What happened to you? And it's like, that is not looking at you as a human being and caring about you. And so that's trauma too.
Yes. And so, age 4 and 5, I was sexually abused by someone outside of the church. And then I grew up with the message, sex is a sin.
Yes.
Go to hell if you have sex. So then what was happening was, well, then I can't ask for help if I've been sexually abused. So I just kept it in. And the thing is that we see God, we see love, we see the world through the lens of our trauma, through the lens of our shame. And so, it was like I was seeing a distorted view of even God. And so I actually went away to become a pastor as well. And that's where I had my spiritual awakening. And so I may have left the church building, but I brought God with me. But I've had people reach out to me being like really concerned about my faith, but I'm like, if you want to have a conversation about it, awesome. But I see the world completely different, and I keep learning that. And it's not the way. It was like a distorted lens. So we all have trauma, every single human being. You don't have to have sexual abuse, or sometimes we're just even emotionally abused, and we're told, well, that's good enough as physical abuse, when, oh my goodness, emotional abuse, you don't see the bruises, you don't see the cuts, but it's in here, and it flows into everything else in your life. So
yeah, when I was a teenager, I don't know if you know my story, but when I was a teenager from 14 until 17 and a half, I had to go live with my dad, and he was highly physically abusive to me. And while that sucked, the emotional abuse lasted decades. And I, in my whole 20s, was always constantly looking over my shoulder, thinking he was coming to kill me. I literally was that scared for my life because of the emotional abuse. He also kind of ruined me in relationships because he's like, well, you're just gay. No girl's ever going to want you. You're undesirable. You're stupid. And I was an honor roll student. I didn't smoke or chew or go with girls who do. I didn't do any of those things that, you know, would make you a bad kid. I was, for all intents and purposes, a really good kid, but he so distorted that for me and made me feel emotionally less than, I guess is the way to put it. And when you feel less than, you don't want to achieve anything. You don't want to strive for anything because you're less than. Well, no girl's going to ever want you, so why bother? And those kind of messages, they stick, and it's hard to unravel the pain that that causes. But it can be done. It may take a long time, but it can be done.
It can be done, and there's no overnight fix. There's no, magic pill. It does take time, and so we're unlearning. I started this journey, at 25. Some people start this journey much later in life, and so it's generations of things, of imprints that you're uncoding. And so it's so important that you be patient with yourself, that you go at your own pace. You're not against anyone. You're going at your own pace. And so it's one step at a time. I think the biggest step is asking for help. I remember.
Well, can I just say, I think a lot of people don't realize they need help. I lived over 4 decades of life before I realized what was going on. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know. I just thought, okay, well, this is just the way the world is for Jimmy. And so I just resigned it. Well, here's more evidence that the world's against me. And like, I would have all of these thought processes of what's wrong with me. Never, did I go through something that I need to work through? That never came on my radar screen until, say, 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I started really digging deeply into it in my late 40s and kind of going, what have I done with my life? Holy crap, I have carried this heavy burden of so much trauma, so much unfulfilledness, just made a word up, and so many things that I wanted to do in life that I just felt like I couldn't get past here. I want to go here, but I couldn't get past here. And then when I started doing the work on myself and actually hired a therapist and actually started speaking out and really kind of digging into what I believe and why I believe it, it changed everything. But I didn't know until I knew.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. You said beliefs, value system. People need to get really clear on what their value system is. And it's allowed to change, you grow. And I remember, I was like hitting that point too of like, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I had no sense of direction. All I knew is I can't stay here. This is not the mold for me. I'm trying to be smaller. I'm trying to fit a square into a circle and it doesn't work. And so I remember going to a life coach that was also a pastor, and I just sat down and I was at a breaking point. So I just had to share with her and go, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life, but I know it's not this. And I was expecting her to condemn me. I was expecting her to shame me because I had shamed myself for so long because of these messages. And so she just looked at me with a huge smile on her face and she said, well, Sarah, what do you want your life to look like? And I was like, the gates opened. It was like, what? Like, why does it feel like I haven't given myself permission to ask that, but I feel like I've never asked that. Like, it's always, Sarah, you're good at this, do this. Sarah, you need to do this because that's what's acceptable. You're only good at this. And that's the messages I took in, and that's what I believed about myself. And so I built this belief system about myself that was not my truth. It was not the future I wanted to create, and I didn't know I was able to create that future. I have people that message me all the time going, is it a sin to love myself? And that just breaks my heart because God is love. If you believe in a higher power, the divine, like, amazing, whatever you want to use, whatever religion you come from. But where I learned to love is also where I learned to judge, and the judgment came louder than the love. And we unconditional love is what's going to save the world, but we have so many conditions we put on others, and we project on, we mirror each other. And so when I get triggered, and when people get triggered, they go, oh my gosh, I'm getting triggered. But it's like, no, triggers are an opportunity. It's going, okay,
Yes.
more work for me to do on myself, more for me to explore about myself. Like this, the discovery of self never ends. And we have these words, trigger, shame, and they have such sometimes bad and negative and toxic meanings, but it's like, no, a trigger is good, but we just don't know how to deal with them. We don't know how to embrace them. So, I mean, it's a journey. It's not all at once, because there's so many different things to unpack, but that was definitely something I wanted to add.
Well, let's get into the subject of shame, because a lot of people carry that around for a variety of reasons. Your sexual abuse could be something you could have shame over. I've got a lot of things that I could say I have shame over in my life. What is shame?
All right, I love this. Okay, so shame, let's break it down. Shame is usually one of three things, and that is the feelings or the thoughts of I'm not good enough, I'm bad, or I'm going to be alone for thinking this way. And so we can all, every single one of us can reflect back on our life, and I call it the shame script. And it might not be just, oh, I'm bad, or I'm not good enough. There's a story attached to it. Someone or something told you weren't good enough, or someone or something told you were bad or wrong. And then that leads to core fears. We all have core fears. And something that, a new definition for fear for me is face everything and rise. And so we have to face those fears. We have to face the shame so we can meet it, so we can understand it, and then we can learn to overcome it. We never fully get rid of shame or fear in this life, but I want people to be empowered to take their control back, to take their power back, dictating their worth. And so a core fear for me that I even still have to be mindful of is, oh, I'm getting it wrong. Like when someone else doesn't approve of me, oh, I've done it wrong. And it's like, no, I'm me. I'm me. I'm just not maybe doing it right to someone else's standards.
Yes.
And I catch myself, because then it spirals into the shame war. And so we do it all the time. We do it in the subconscious. And so it's that work of self-awareness. And first I encourage people to go, okay, what is the shame script I'm holding about myself? Is there a story that's dictating to me that I'm not good enough? Is there a story that says I'm bad for being this way? And it doesn't just show up when we're holding that shame. It doesn't just show up in one relationship or at the workplace. It shows up in almost every aspect of our life, including when we look at ourselves in the mirror. Doesn't matter if we're a man or a woman. So, yeah.
Shame can originate in other people, and it usually does. In my case, it was my dad saying all those ugly things to me and putting those thoughts in my head. But then shame proliferates right here.
Yeah.
Because,
exactly.
And I have one of those minds, Sarah, that like I remember things really vividly, and so I can still vividly remember the abuse, but I remember him speaking angrily at me these thoughts, and so I can see those in my mind's eye, and those just kind of go. Now I've been able to quiet them a lot in the past few years, and so I'm thankful for that. But for many years, those things would pop up, especially situationally, where there was something that society said, oh, you did wrong there. And it wasn't necessarily that it was wrong. It was just, I did it my way and they wanted me to do it another way. And so it came across. And so I would have shame, but well, I didn't do it the right way, but according to the standards of other people. And so this is why living authentically in who you are is the biggest shame buster there is, because if you live who you are, what do you have to be ashamed of at that point?
Exactly. And that's the thing is that authenticity. The thing is that there's not just one form of me. I may have one name, but there's many different forms of me. And that's why expression is so beautiful.